Kids have been used as a bit of a football during this pandemic. The desire to reopen schools is being used as sort of an incentive to get people to accept reopening everything. A lot of people are under pressure. The fact that they're suddenly having to homeschool their kids when they've never done that, never had any inclination to do that in the past. Yesterday, actually, Dr. Fauci was testifying before the Senate and said that kids would still potentially be at risk if they were to go back, let alone all of the adults that work at schools. And when the kids return, we've heard rumors that kids spread germs from time to time. I know it's crazy. We're looking into it. Trump responded to Fauci's testimony, saying that he was surprised by Fauci's warning during Senate testimony this week, and that schools should be careful. I want to give you a little bit more of what he said, because he really did seem incensed by the fact that Fauci is being so openly critical of him.
Hey, Dr. Fauci is playing both sides. Are you suggesting that the advice he's giving
to
you
is
I
was surprised by his answer, actually, because, it's just... To me, it's not an acceptable answer, especially when it comes to schools. The only thing that would be acceptable, as I said, is professors, teachers, etc., over a certain age. I think they ought to take it easy for another few weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks, who knows, whatever it may be. But I think they have to be careful because this is a disease that attacks age and it attacks health. And if you have a heart problem, if you have diabetes, if you're a certain age, it's certainly much more dangerous. But with the young children, and students, it's just take a look at the statistics. It's pretty amazing.
That was pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was. It attacks age. It attacks health.
Right.
Oh, God. I just hope to get to the end of my life without ever finding myself part of a movement or a cult following a politician that requires you to accept so much obvious in-your-face stupidity on a daily basis. Yeah. But anyway, the kids, it's amazing when you look at the statistics. And so he's reasonable, though. He says the oldest professors, those with underlying conditions, should maybe consider taking 4, maybe 5 weeks off, and then that ought to do it. Let's check back in 5 weeks to see how many people are dying every day from coronavirus in America. But anyway, what's your reaction overall to this debate, Michael?
And let's send our kids to school so that they can contract the virus, maybe not have it affect them, but carry it to others. Let's do that. It's just another embarrassment. There's not much to say about it. Who am I going to trust in that conversation? It's implicit. And I think we're seeing that most Americans are trusting the same person I am and just kind of treading water with this guy.
Exactly. And look, overall, statistically, yes, kids don't seem to suffer as horribly when they have symptoms of coronavirus. They don't die at the same rate of, in particular, older individuals and those with underlying conditions. That is true. Let's bear in mind for 1 second that when we talk about, you'll often hear, Fox hosts say, the people who are dying had something else going on. And they're sort of they're vague about it, as if the things that would conspire with coronavirus to take you down are rare. But Trump actually admitted there, no, it's things like heart problems, diabetes. Diabetes is not rare in America. It is incredibly common. Millions and millions and millions and millions of Americans have it. So some of these complicating factors are not the sorts of things that show up on Dr. House or these are very common things that an increasing percentage of the American public have. So just understand that. When it comes to the kids, though, another thing that I want to remind everyone of, this is something that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and it's that there is this syndrome that apparently seems linked to coronavirus that is having a big effect on kids, and that's now up to 15 states that are investigating cases that could be linked to either Kawasaki disease, or it looks like something that might function similarly to Kawasaki disease. It's a rare inflammatory condition that often impacts kids age 5 years or younger, and toxic shock syndrome. New York has now discovered 102 cases in children that show symptoms similar to that rare disease, and we're seeing it in more countries and more states, and about 60% of the 102 cases in New York tested positive for coronavirus. Of those cases, 70% were admitted into ICU and 19% resulted in intubation. And so that means that it does appear that these kids, while not suffering necessarily directly from coronavirus, there is an associated syndrome that can affect them, and when it does, it is serious. And New York, they've already lost 3 children to it. Now, no, that's not 1,500, 2,000 a day like coronavirus, the havoc it's wreaking on older Americans. but they're not immune to it in any way. They can spread it, and they can also apparently fall ill or fatally ill to this associated syndrome.
Yeah, not to mention that children are the least hygienic of the population, generally speaking, right? I mean, they're not concerned with that. They become petri dishes for this virus in which to live. And so I think that there is another danger that the people the right people are focusing on, but the other people are glossing over. And then you have this related illness that's happening right now, whether it's Kawasaki or toxic shock or something that combines the two. I don't know, obviously, but I do think that there's clearly enough evidence to say maybe we shouldn't open schools just yet.
Exactly. And like, I get why the right is focusing on kids in their rhetoric, because obviously they're very concerned about the lives of their kids. It's like, it's the thing that drives our species to continue to exist. And so they have to convince people that there's no threat to them. And look, obviously there is a lower threat, but there is still a threat. Kids do still get severely sick from coronavirus. Kids do still die at limited numbers, but they do. And the fact that they completely ignore, still to this day, the obvious fact that they would spread it to adults at home is just so utterly dishonest. And that they do that layered on top of telling people for weeks now, like, your grandma's had a good run, you shouldn't worry about her. It's just so thoroughly immoral. In a time of crisis like this, the fact that what they're focusing on is trying to get people to set aside what empathy they have that remains after a difficult couple months of quarantine. It's the exact opposite thing out of what we should be able to expect from, the biggest media company in the world, or in the country at the very least. But that's the direction they've gone in. For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.